Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. And I'm super excited because today I'm going to be talking about books, and I love books. So let's just get into it. So, over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of discourse about book talk and about carrying books as accessories. And lots of people seem to have a lot of opinions about this, and so do I. And I wanted to share mine. So, at first, just like a lot of other people online, I seemed to be, well, I didn't seem to be. I was definitely a little bit more judgmental of book talk and certain content that you can find on it and the choices that people were making in terms of their books. But I do have to say that I am, as someone who is a fan of books, I love reading, I can never see a trend for books as a bad thing. Even if someone is carrying a book as an accessory, I can never see that as a negative thing because I just, I don't know, I just don't get it. I don't have it in me to judge something like that because I cannot think of that being, there's no way I can twist it to be something negative. So even if someone is, you know, carrying a book as an accessory to want to seem to be cool, want to appear chic or something like that, I don't really see that as a negative thing. So I don't really understand the hate about that. However, as for book talk, there's so many different books trending on book talk. So I do have to say that a huge chunk of it is completely not for me. And there's just a lot of stuff that I will never touch, I will never look at, I will never read, and that is okay. I'm also not necessarily judging people who do choose to read, certain types of um, literature that I personally would never touch. A few points on that though. So, just one point I have to make before we move forward with this is that obviously I am in no way, shape, or form supporting authors or books that, glamorize abuse or something like that, or specifically glamorize it, not just talk about it, because I think it's okay to talk about different topics, but it's important how you do that. And when people glamorize abuse or glamorize things that should not really not be, glamorized and talked about in a way that they are being talked about, and when people try to pretend that, these extremely dark and twisted and abusive, hurtful things are love, that's where I have a problem. And this is something that I will never support. And I don't understand people who endorse that. So that will never be me. And that I do judge because that is just not okay. That's morally wrong. So we're not doing that. However, a little background on me in terms of my reading. I grew up reading primarily classics, and not, because that was my choice necessarily, right? Like I didn't really have much of a choice. I wasn't really allowed to read any contemporary books, besides a couple of series that I will mention in a bit. But I mostly read classics because that's what I was reading in school. I do have to say that even though I wasn't a fan of a lot of stuff that I was reading, um, just because it was like mandatory, it was not for pleasure, it still informed my taste and it still kind of molded me into the person that I am today. It molded me into a reader that I am today. And I definitely, it formed my taste. So I definitely have to say that, for example, the style of writing is extremely important to me. It's really hard for me to read something that is written poorly. And again, I'm not judging other people who do that because people have different experience reading and different taste, really, as simple as that. But to me personally, that is a huge turn off when I see a book written really, really poorly using extremely informal language. That's just not for me. That is just not me. And that's okay. And that's okay. Having said that, I have definitely noticed that I put myself in a certain box, and that kind of limited my choices a little bit. The problem is that I am seeing people enjoying contemporary books so much, and I feel like I cannot participate in that because that is like not for me, and I cannot, you know, like participate in that, which sounds ridiculous. But again, as somebody who was like not really allowed to read like modern contemporary books growing up, the only things that I read um that really got me into reading, and something that I really enjoyed myself, like no one made me read them, were the Harry Potter series and the Twilight series. These are the series that I loved growing up, and I could not put them down. I was absolutely obsessed. I loved them to bits and pieces, and these are probably some of the like the only kind of modern contemporary books that somehow I was allowed to read. Right now, I have been going through transformations in my life more recently, and like rethinking my whole life over the last like generally a couple of years, I guess, and having a lot of existential crisis, and um trying to like unburden myself from my past experiences somehow, and trying to heal, trying to understand who I am, trying to get back to myself, and trying to understand what brings me joy and what kind of things that, I actually want to do. And I realized that I no longer want to put myself in molds like that. I still love my classics. I still love classical fiction very much so. I did have a period of time in my early 20s, I want to say, when I was reading pretty much primarily nonfiction. And I'm glad that I, have gone through that stage, because I am very comfortably, you know, happily reading mostly fiction at this point, completely by choice. And I'm very, very happy about that. I think that I do want to talk about fiction and nonfiction books separately in a different video, because to me it's a separate topic, and I want to talk about it also as a neuroscientist, as a neurolinguist. And a lot of people seem to think that like nonfiction somehow, I don't know why I did that, but nonfiction somehow is better, somehow is like more educational or something like that. I want to talk about how that's not the case actually, but we'll talk about that some other time. This time we're talking about silly books that bring joy. And that's the whole point. I decided to kind of start to dabble into more contemporary romantasy, may I say. Which is not really like me. But at the same time, is it though? Is it really not though? Is it really not? If you watch any of my previous videos, you would know that I struggle with my mental health, unfortunately, and have had issues with it pretty much my whole life. And it is work for me to feel good. I have to put effort into feeling good, which I can talk about separately also. And I think I should, because I think lots of people will benefit from that. And I decided that I should start doing more things that are not so serious, like quote unquote. I don't know. And look at me reading ACOTAR. I picked up the second book after struggling with the first one. I read the first book in the ACOTAR series almost 2 years ago, and it actually took me quite a while to get through it. I wasn't a fan. It was a little bit boring to me, written a little bit too simply. Again, I don't judge other people's taste, but that's just how I felt about it, and still kind of do, It wasn't like I started to get more interested in it towards the end, definitely. And after watching so many reviews and so many videos, I love watching videos on books. Like this is some of my favorite content, truly. And I decided to give it another shot and actually continue with it. I am enjoying the second book so much more. There's so much more world building happening, and I feel like maybe the writing style improved a little bit also. Like I'm definitely not bothered by it as much. For sure. I'm not thinking about it. I also decided to gloss over the things that are not necessarily for me, and things that I'm not like really vibing with. I'm not a fan of like immature characters. I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of the main female character, but that's okay. I'm not bothered by that. Again, I decided to pick and choose the things that are fun. Here's what I want to say. I have been pretty much binging this book, and well, as a slow reader that I am. And I have to say that it had a really, really positive impact on my mental health, which is wild. But I just simply have been having fun. It was just simply joyous. And I decided that, like, there is no reason for me to deprive myself from, like, silly little fun moments like that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it might be silly, it might seem silly that I'm talking about these things because it's just so obvious. But if you have grown up with certain programming about, like, the kind of stuff you should do and shouldn't do, and like what's like good and what's like not good, and like what's highbrow, what's not, and um if you've also seen videos online about like book talk and people judging book talk and talking about how a lot of it is like really poorly written, it's just, lots of people look down on it, and I completely understand. I do understand that. But on the other hand, I'm also critically against generalizing like that. Like, I consume a lot of book content basically, and like reading content, and I do have to say that there are lots of people giving you a lot of different options. Like, it's not exclusively just one genre that people talk about. Like, I am not interested in the types of like Colleen Hoover type of books. So I'm not liking that content. I'm not consuming it. So I'm not getting more of it. And, I'm not planning on reading any of that stuff. I've heard enough. I've learned plenty that completely turned me off from it. So, you know, do not restrict yourself by yourself. Like, why would you do that to yourself? You know what I'm saying? I guess what I'm trying to do here is like trying to expand your horizons a little bit, and like show you a different perspective that um especially if you grew up with a mentality like mine, that like if you're reading, reading is such a serious business and it has to be done for educational purposes, so you have to be reading something that is necessarily highbrow basically, right? Like, you're supposed to be reading known classical authors. So yeah, I am confidently saying that I am very much healing from that mentality, and I am focusing on stuff that is just simply fun. So there's definitely a lot of pretentiousness going on online, and a lot of people seem to have a lot of problems with contemporary, specifically romantic kind of stuff, because I understand that a lot of it is written purely for like fun and pleasure purposes. It doesn't have much plot in it a lot of the times. There's a lot of heavy focus on the romance part, which I also don't think is such a bad thing, especially considering, again, the times we're living in and how kind of dark and gruesome things are sometimes. Well, a lot of the times, actually, right? So it is most definitely a form of escapism, but I personally view it as one of the healthiest form of escapism. It's definitely the case that not everyone is fortunate enough to live somewhere wonderful and safe and beautiful. So yeah, I guess I just don't understand the level of judgment that people have about that. Like, I truly feel like sometimes it's not that deep. Um, I do believe it's that deep when it comes to serious topics that are being glossed over and glamorized, like abuse. Like I said before, the kind of stuff is dangerous, and we should not be doing that, especially when we talk about young readers who are consuming this kind of literature, and they learn from it, and they learn to see certain really dark, negative, potentially really hurtful things and harmful things as love. Like, that is definitely very wrong. And even when I mentioned that I love the Twilight series, which, like, I was like 13, 14 years old. I think I was 13 years old when I read the whole series. Like, I literally just binged it. As a slow reader, I read it very, very quickly. I read it very, very quickly. Rewatching movies later on in my life, and like most recently, which is still obviously a lot of fun, and a lot of it is really quite funny. And I'm saying it with all the love. Like, I truly love and respect the Twilight series. And it still has a lot of problematic moments that looking at right now, I am seeing as well, like that could be really problematic. So, to conclude, I believe that healing from book shame, healing from, being unserious shame is one of the best things that can happen to us. And it's definitely one of the best things that happened to me. I have a very extensive TBR at this point, and I'm very happy about it. I'm definitely planning on reading more romantic fantasy books simply because it is fun. And I'm reading the ones that are, if you want to know, if you are interested in, my personal taste, I'm definitely interested in really high quality world building and a really good plot. I am interested in plot, but at the same time, I am also interested in the romantic part of the book too. I want my romantic book, no, I want my fantasy book to have a good romantic story as well. But, I'm not so interested if it's just the romance. Definitely not. And yeah, who knew that I am a fantasy fan at this point? I could never understand that growing up. In my early 20s, I could never understand that. I did not get the hype over fantasy whatsoever because I feel like it was always popular. And I went to bookstores pretty much every weekend. And not necessarily to buy anything, but just to spend time in bookshops because I love bookshops and I love books. And I've always been like that. I just love to be around them. And I always found a lot of people in the fantasy section. And I never understood. I didn't even know, I wouldn't even know where to start. So my recommendation, the very first recommendations that I ever got was from like people that I knew and people whose opinions I trusted. So this is kind of how I started to get into fantasy. And I'm really, really happy that it finally happened for me and I really got into it. It's just fun. There's something very healing about doing something very silly and kind of unserious, I guess. Please let me know if you have any other questions to me about books or anything else. Really, I definitely plan to talk about books more because I love that. And um, yeah, I'm really excited that I finally started talking about this. So if you've been feeling judgmental over what other people read, maybe it could be a good idea for you to try something new. Maybe it's a good sign to try something new. There's so many books, there's so many genres and subgenres that you can definitely find something that would suit you because I think that like it's really hard to like satisfy my taste personally when it comes to books. Like it is really hard, really. So at the same time, I'm grateful that I'm remaining pretty open-minded about this. So yes, anyways, you guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I really enjoyed making it and I love talking about books and I will definitely talk about them more in the future. If you have any questions or if you have any video topic ideas, please let me know in the comment section down below. And I love you so very much and thank you very much for watching this. I appreciate you all and I will see you in the next one.